Hey, everybody, and welcome to Nola 25, a podcast where we sit down with Christian leaders across the city, hear their stories, and discuss what it looks like to do ministry in New Orleans. Today, we're going to be sitting down with Ryan Rice, pastor of Connect Church in Algiers and champion of Compassion Ministries in the city. I'm super excited to sit down and chat with him, and I know that you all will benefit from our conversation as well. So, enjoy. What's up, Ryan? So happy to have you here, man.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So to get us started off, why don't you just tell us where you're from originally and kind of how you ended up getting to be where you are pastoring Connect Church?
Yeah, so from New Orleans, born and raised all my life practically.
Awesome.
So I grew up right down the street from the church that I pastor, so
Wow.
in the same neighborhood. Grew up going to church, with the grandparents, that kind of thing, but really didn't come to faith in Christ until October of 2001. So sophomore in college, my wife met her. She was a Christian. She started really praying for me, which seemed like life started getting crazy after she started praying for me.
Wow.
She invited me to church, and so I started going because, hey, I wanted to, like this girl, wanted to start going to church. So
Yeah.
her dad was really one of the first people who actually started sharing the gospel with me. And so dad shared the gospel with me, really started getting convicted by the truth of the word, go to a men's meeting with him, end up responding to the gospel. And really, he's the one who really led me to the Lord. And
Wow.
so 2006, fast forward from then, 2006, I ended up going into full-time ministry, working at my church in the kids ministry, believe it or not. So was doing that for a while. Then as time passed, just really started feeling that tug to come back home. Didn't really know what that was.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I just started praying about it, really seeking God and just asking, Lord, what is it that you want from us? What do you want us to do? She started feeling that same tug to come back to New Orleans. We had no idea at the time it would be church planning at all. We just
Really?
thought we were going to move back home. And then God just really started doing our hearts about, really planning a church here, seeing the gospel just flourish in the city. And one of the things we knew we were going to come back and just be kind of linking the chain of what was already happening. And so, 2014, moved back home and started planning the church.
Man, that's so awesome. So you became a believer your sophomore year of college.
Yeah.
And what college was that?
So I went to college here in New
Okay.
Orleans. Everything's in New Orleans.
So it all happened here.
Yeah,
It all happened here. So
elementary
like when you
school.
said you came back home, you meant back to your neighborhood.
Back
Like,
to the neighborhood.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I went to Dillard University, which is right
Okay.
down the street.
Yeah.
And just coming directly back to the same neighborhood I was born in as well.
Man.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. So how long have you been pastoring at Connect Church now?
So we started the church in 2014,
Okay.
really hit the ground running, just starting a little core group and then blossomed from there. So 2014, so you look at about 6 years that we've been going and planning. And then 3 years ago, we did a whole merger where we replanted, which is
Yeah.
a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But so really a total 6 years we've been going.
Okay, cool. So when you guys first launched, did y'all launch as like a Bible study or did you launch as a service? Like how did the beginnings of your church, like what did that look like?
Sure. Well, we did what we tell people not to do. We parachuted in with
Oh, wow.
nobody.
Yeah.
So we knew the context. I mean, this was home for us,
Right.
but we didn't know anybody. I had been gone for like 7.5, years.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we started thinking about was like we were leaving our church, leaving a different denominational background as well. So for us, we were starting from square one.
Right.
So really, we reached out to some Christians that we knew, some folks that we knew that were interested in possibly being a part of a church plant here in the city. Started meeting with that core group. Of course, did the Bible study thing at a coffee shop, and then started reaching out to just unbelievers.
Yeah.
And so we just started reaching people that we knew from living here before, some people who were friends, and just said, hey, look, why don't you start coming to this Bible study? And then we just started from there.
Man, that's so powerful. So like at this point, you're 6 years in, people have a lot of different definitions of like, I guess what it looks like to go from being a church plant to being a, people say like self-sustaining church or independent church. Do you consider Connect at this point to be a plant, or do you feel like you guys are out of that sort of stage of church life? Talk about that some.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that's one that planners wrestle with a lot, especially like in different circles that you're in. Like, when are you now no longer a church plant?
Yeah.
I would say this: the people that attend our church, if you would say, "Hey, you go to a church plant," they probably would say, "No, I don't. I go to a church and I
Yeah.
go to Connect Church." There's some parts internally that are still very much like a plant,
Yeah.
even after this time. But where we are now, we're progressing to the point where we're kind of moving out of the church plant stage
Yeah.
and really looking forward to more or less how do we plant another church out of us?
Yeah.
How do we, we're raising up leaders now, really have a residency, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I would say we've progressed to the point now to where if you would ask someone internally or even within our church, hey, we're a church plant, they would say, no, not really. I go to a church.
Yeah.
And so I think some of that has come from having new leaders, having structures in place. But then also, too, I think depending on the context, it's not always based on if you're self-sustaining. Because
Right.
your context may depend that you may not be a self-sustaining church and you may be, having partners, but you've moved out of that place structurally where you're not as a plant anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in Algiers. I actually don't know a lot about Algiers. Talk some about Algiers. Is it pretty like, does Algiers like look pretty uniform, or is it really like diverse? Like, what's Algiers like?
Yeah, so Algiers is, in a lot of ways, and some people feel like this, the stepchild of the city, because
Right.
we're on the other side of the river. So
Yeah.
we're the only part of New Orleans that's on the opposite side of the bridge.
Okay.
So you think of Algiers, like one of the oldest neighborhoods in all of New Orleans.
Yeah.
It's about 45-ish, 47,000-ish people from
Right.
the last time I looked. And Algiers looks just like New Orleans. It feels like New Orleans. When I say New Orleans, I mean the incorporated city,
Yeah.
downtown. It feels just like this. It's 7 minutes or 10 minutes from downtown.
Yeah.
And I would say it's very much community, family oriented. Even growing up there, it's a different vibe. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows, this one who went to school, that one who went to school. So you have this very family kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
Still a lot of older people that own their homes and that kind of thing.
Do you happen to know how many people like are in Algiers, like roughly?
Yeah, so I think the last time I checked, it was about 47,000-ish.
Wow. So
something
like
that.
big. So like a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of people that live there. And then you think about like the diversity too. It looks just like the city. So you have majority African American, then you have white, and then Hispanic, and then we have a Vietnamese community that's
Really? I didn't know
in
that.
Algiers as well. So right, kind of tucked off in the back of Algiers, and what we call the cutoff, there's entire Vietnamese community down
Wow.
there as well. So yeah.
Man, that's awesome. So what are some of the unique opportunities and maybe also unique challenges of planting or pastoring in
Yeah.
Algiers?
Yeah, I think when we first started, just hitting the ground running, you saw that there are different pockets and different, I guess you would say, even like little worlds within our own community. So take, for example, Algiers Point, which is one of the older parts of Algiers. On one side of the street, which is divided by a street called Opelousas, you have one side where you have maybe like the median income, maybe $100,000
Wow, okay.
of people living there.
Yeah.
On the opposite side of the street, you have poverty or below poverty. And you have these people living on top of one another.
Yeah.
The one thing that was interesting is that on one side of the street, you'll go and you'll witness, you'll kind of do evangelism over there, and you have very much a stone wall. Hey, we don't need you. We don't want you. Get out of our neighborhood, that kind of thing. On the other side, you still have some opposition, but it's very much different. So you have that kind of dynamic there. And then you have, so the opportunity, of course, is reaching, of course, those kind of aspects of the community.
Yeah.
But I think some of the challenges come in that you have a lot of people who've been already churched. And so you have a lot of people that have been churched. And so that's really what we deal with. We deal with a lot of people that have already been churched.
Yeah.
They know something of Christ, but when you start talking about the gospel, what does that look like? That's still foreign.
Yeah. So how would you describe that? Because I know that like in the Southeast, we kind of have this like cultural Christianity thing, which is like this. I know the gospel. I've been in church. I can give you the answers, but my life bears no fruit. Would you say that's kind of what's going on in Algiers, or is it something distinct?
No, I think you have a lot of that. I think you have the mix of that with the cultural Catholicism too, that kind of comes with it. So you have this idea of works, and my works are earning me my righteousness. But then, yeah, you have a lot of, hey, I've been to church, I've gone to church, and so, yeah, I can give you all the right answers. But do I truly know Christ? That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Man, that's so interesting. So you're doing ministry in Algiers. You've been planning for 6 years, and then all of a sudden this crazy like pandemic thing hits,
Yeah.
which just rocks everybody's world. How did that shift ministry for you guys? And I guess sort of like how did it affect you at first, and now where are you at, having been learning for the last like 6 months now?
No, I think that's a great question. So when this first started happening, it was I guess you would say an exciting trepidation kind of thing,
Okay.
if you could describe it that way.
Yeah.
The excitement was, okay, hey, this is an opportunity to just face this challenge head on, figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to connect with people, and we're just going to kind of do it. And so early on, it was like, hey, okay, let's make sure our social media presence is there. Let's make sure we're connecting with people. I think as the months went on, it got weary, of course.
Yeah.
Because, you're transitioning from this very much in person, very personal. Also, to our church is very outreach focused. And so we weren't able to do as many outreaches as we were doing in the past. And so that was very hard to navigate through. How do you continue to reach the neighborhood? How do you continue to reach your own people? And then you're thinking about, we're reaching a lot of people that are already on the fringes of what you would say is like Christianity anyway.
Yeah.
So then how do you connect with those people?
Right.
And so it was a steep learning curve. One of the things my wife said was that she felt like we were back to plant square one again.
Wow.
And that's really what it felt like. It was like, constantly have to be innovative, constantly have to think on your toes, shift really fast. And so I think one of the things I learned was the need for not only innovation, but also immense prayer and wisdom. Because, you can come up with all these like cool things to do,
right?
But you really need the Lord's hand to really help you, reach people where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk some about outreach. What did outreach look like for you guys? Sort of like, well, this is the new normal, I guess, but what did it look like for you guys sort of pre-COVID?
Yeah.
And now that we're in the midst of COVID, what does that look like for y'all?
So one of the things that we were praying and thinking through is that when this first started happening, we kind of saw already coming down the pipeline, hey, we're probably going to get, shut down.
Right.
We're going to be locked down, that kind of thing. So our leadership team started praying and saying, okay, what is this going to look like? Because we know, even as a church, and we're a smaller church, how can we be visible in the neighborhood when we can't be visible?
Right.
Right. One of the biggest fears we had was that we'll just be this building on the corner now and nothing is happening. So we began to pray and pray. And one of the things we asked the Lord is like, Lord, just give us some type of person of peace, some type of like creative idea of what we can do to just impact people. So just in God's providence and sovereignty, I get a phone call on a Sunday. I ride my bike on the levee, and the council person says, hey, look, can we host a food pantry at your church, during this time? And I was like, yeah, like for sure. Straight on partnership, with them. And that was a saving grace for us because it helped us to impact the community fully right then and there. And then, you talk about now that we've kind of getting into some type of normal, we've been able to just kind of creatively do some stuff that we were doing early on in church planning.
Yeah, yeah.
So backpack giveaways, standing on the corner, prayer walking, going to people's doors, putting stuff on people's doors. So thinking of creative things that worked early on in the church plant, they still work now.
Right. That's awesome. And I guess, from what I understand, you guys have been super compassion ministry oriented, like pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah.
Talk about maybe how your church came to be that way. Was that like a part of your vision from the beginning, or was it just something that kind of came together? Or
yeah, I think one of the things that happened was when I left the church I was a part of, I was overseeing like their outreach ministry there. And so I knew coming into the city, like one, we wanted to be focused on the gospel, but also meeting people where they were.
Right.
And so we just really, I'll tell you this, the first time we got together, we had a group of people we were meeting with at the coffee shop. Probably like the fourth week in, I said, hey, look, we want to go out and actually be the church. And so we had some unbelievers, and then we had some believers. And so they were like, well, what does this look like?
Right.
So I said, look, I'm going to call up a bunch of people I know and just ask for money for them to help us reach an apartment complex that we were living in.
Yeah.
So I reached out to all the people I knew and say, look, we want to give away school supplies. We want to give away free resources to people. And keep in mind, we're only like 4 weeks old.
Right. Wow.
And so we went out and we got people that we knew to help us, people we were friends with, some people who were like, not even like Christians yet, like, hey, look, come and serve with us.
Man.
And we just served the apartment complex, gave away all kind of free stuff. And the one thing people always say to us, like, well, what, you're a church, but you're not a church. Like, you know, you don't have a building. That was the big thing. But we're like, no, like, we want to love people, we want to point people to Christ. And that's really who we are as a church. Like, our vision is to glorify Christ, make disciples, and serve the city. So really in the DNA of who we are is really this idea of just serving people and loving people.
Yeah, man, that's so good. Okay, so I didn't plan to ask you this question, but I'm really curious. Talk some about your views of, like, how does outreach, and I guess by outreach, I mean some of this, like, compassion ministry, like these meeting these physical needs. Like, how do you see those, like, outreach being related to, like, sharing the gospel, if that makes sense?
No,
like,
it makes sense.
How do you talk about how you see those as being related?
Yeah, so I think as a church, you got to make sure you have a good balance, because, you know, you can be that church that actually helps and then it hurts.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that you can end up doing is that, like, you're doing all these good things, but you're actually not pointing people to the life-saving message of Christ. And so as a church, you got to find that balance of, okay, if we're going out to do an outreach, let's say, and our church kind of breaks them down to categories. Like, we have large community outreaches that just kind of bring awareness to who we are. And then we have smaller outreaches that are targeted at specific groups of people that we're going out to reach.
Yeah.
But no matter what outreach we're doing, we're going to be having some facet of the gospel shared in some shape, way, or form.
That's awesome.
Whether it's one-on-one,
Yeah.
whether it's a broad, you know, hey, evangelistic type of message, whether it's like a track and a book or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think the key thing you have to say is that, hey, we're serving people to love them, but really our aim is to point them to Christ, and that should be in all that you're doing. And so we've seen for us, in fact, anytime we do an outreach, we don't do it with the intended purpose to say these people we're reaching, they're going to automatically come to our church. We're doing it with almost like this Acts type of approach.
Okay.
That we're going into the public square to serve people and love people, proclaim Christ. And it's God who then draws and brings them in. So it takes away a lot of the pressure, because now when we come back, our level of success is not, oh, how many people came to the church from this? It's how many people did we reach with the message of Christ from this? And then you see the return on it down the line. So it's just trusting God through it. And we've seen God just open a lot of doors for us that way.
Man, that's so awesome. And I guess that comes back to what you said earlier about how prayer is, it's like, when that's your method, like when your method is, we're going to be faithful and trust God to work, it's like, man, prayer is essential at that point. Like,
yeah. I think it's so huge, man, because, you know, I can point to right now several families in our church that came from just us doing, like, you know, some type of compassion, like a ministry, you know, and it wasn't a pressure on them to say, hey, we're here, we want to do this thing, and now come to our church. It was like, hey, no, we're the hands and feet of Jesus. And so I think when people see that you're being the hands and feet of Jesus, not necessarily saying, hey, I'm promoting my church.
Right.
But hey, no, we're here.
Yeah.
And we're the hands and feet of Christ. It makes the world of a difference.
Man. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So in these, we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit. You've been here for 6 years. Have you ever had a moment or had moments when, like, when you wanted to leave, like when things were just really hard?
Yeah.
And like, and I guess then obviously you're still here. So like, if so, how did God keep you here in the midst of that?
Yeah. So, you know, I think with anything you have that honeymoon kind of moment, you know, when you first, it's so exciting and, you know, everything's going, people are like, you know, engaged, and then it happens. People are people, and you are people, and you got to deal with like the hardships of just doing this work for the Lord.
Yeah.
So you have, of course, your own flesh you're dealing with, and you're, you know, God is working on you and sanctifying you. But then you have a real enemy that's there, and the spiritual warfare part of it. I think for me, the time that I really just wanted to leave is probably about 2 years ago. I remember going through a whole year. It's just a hard time.
Yeah.
This is a hard time. You know, you had people leaving. You had people, you know, because people don't all stay with you.
Right.
And then you just are striving to just see, you know, God move, and you're just, God, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, there's many times I've told my wife, I say, look, like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, you know, let's just do something else.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, I would say that and they get a phone call. Somebody's like, hey, man, look, I got this job opportunity for you at this church. Wow. Man, you think like you want to take it. It's like, you know, it's steady. You don't have to worry about raising money.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, man. But I never forget Pastor Fred Luter told me this when I first came here. He said, you need to be faithful to God, faithful to your family, your wife, and faithful to the call of God and the people of God.
Amen.
And, I rest on that. And, we're at a place now where I know and believe that this is where God has us. And our labor for the Lord is just not done yet here. And so until the Lord moves us or says, hey, your time is up, I have to really come under the authority of Christ, submit my will to his, but then also to find other brothers and sisters around you that can pray for you, can encourage you. And then also, for me personally, just as a church planner, just finding other brothers who are going through the same thing and find that brotherhood and that encouragement and help you to press on.
Man, that's awesome. So speaking of what keeps you in the city, give me your top 3 favorite restaurants in New Orleans.
All right. So,
and I'm going to say this. I didn't prepare you for this. Give me at least one in Algiers, because I barely ever eat in Algiers. Give me at least one in Algiers.
All right. So, Katie's is one of my wife and I's favorite one. There's another restaurant called Cafe Degas, which it's like your date night type of place.
Okay, what kind of food?
It's like a French bistro type of thing with like a New Orleans
Creole kind of twist.
Yeah, kind of twist to it. So good. It's not a place you go to like all the time, but it's anniversary, birthday kind of thing.
Yeah, special.
It is special. Yeah. And so in Algiers, Algiers is small, so we don't have like a ton of things. Right. There's some really good places, but this is okay. I'm gonna have to give you 2. Okay.
All right. Give me 2. Hey, I accept. That's fine with me.
So, man, I guess it would be Tape's Water Ice, which is
that place. Yeah,
it's really good, and then Olive Branch Cafe.
Okay. I don't know Olive Branch Cafe. What?
So Olive Branch Cafe, it's Italian, but then they have like some New Orleans like stuff on the menu as well. It's Christian owned as well. Olive Branch Cafe, it's the best pizza you ever have.
Oh my gosh.
Sandwiches, subs. Pasta.
I love pizza.
Yeah, look, there's a Cajun pasta they have, and it's so good.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Dang. This is my secret motivation for doing this podcast, just to get those food recommendations.
There you go.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Awesome.
So for people who might be interested in the church, how can they get connected with you guys?
So if you go to our website, that's the best way, connectalgiers.com. You can find a way to, sign up for our newsletter, find out what's going on, catch sermons, all that good stuff. And then too, if you're interested in, maybe partnering with us in some type of way or coming down, that's the best way to do it. Also, just to keep up with myself, my family, you can check out my website, ryanricesenior.com. You can go there, see my latest blog posts, messages, and all the fun stuff we're up to.
Gotcha. Cool. And then also, this is kind of our last thing. How can people be praying for you and for your church just in the midst of this season and more generally?
So I would say praying for our church that we'll see more leaders really raised up. And so right now we have been blessed where we have some good godly leaders, but we're praying for just our leaders to be strengthened, but also their willingness to make disciples. So really pray for us as we're really trying to make disciples that make disciples in that. Pray for our church to have wisdom and insight on how to really engage our community continually, because with all the things going on around us, it's sometimes you're trying to figure out, okay, man, the community is needing this. So you want to make sure we're answering the right questions that the community is asking. And so pray for us to have wisdom in that. And then pray for our family. Just pray for our family. We have 4 young kids as well, and we're homeschooling them as well as trying to point them to Christ and keep them engaged. And so just be praying for our family as well as we serve in the city.
Absolutely, man. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on, dude. This has been a great first episode. And this has been awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank y'all so much for joining us for NOLA 25. If you want to find out more info about Ryan Rice or Connect Church, you can find that at connectalgiers.com. Algiers is spelled Algiers. connectalgiers.com. You can also find information on their Instagram. You can find that with Connect Algiers, and their Facebook, which is Connect Church of Algiers. We also want to give a special thanks to a few people. Firstly, to the New Orleans Baptist Association for allowing us to record here. We also want to thank Lakeshore Church for providing this equipment, and we want to thank Abby Guidry, our production assistant. Thank y'all for watching.